When you say nation, you talk about land. Our land is Africa. That's undeniable. This land is not our land.
That what Frantz Fanon's theory, psychological theory, is that we're in a post-colonial psychology. And what he calls that is an auto-destructional stage, which is the oppressor will oppress for so long that the oppressed no longer have to be physically oppressed. They do it to themselves automatically.
I'm black. Do you hear me, man? Do you understand? I am black. I'm a nigga. You understand me? I was born black, I live black, and I'm gonna die probably because I'm black. Because some cracker that knows I'm black better than you, nigga, is probably gonna put a bullet in the back of my head.
Hey man, it's like this, man. It's like, you know, it's like it's revolution time, man. There's no questions to ask. Revolution is here. You know what I'm saying? We the youth, we the young. It's time for us to break loose, you know? We don't have no freedom, no rights, man. We slaves right now. Everybody's still a slave. That's what they told us today. In other words, you still a slave. No matter how much money you got, you still ain't shit. So, you know, it's on, just like that. Just like
are really ready and willing to pay the price that is necessary for freedom. Our people will always be walking around here second-class citizens, or what you call 20th century slaves.
What price are you talking about, sir?
The price of freedom is death.
What's the figure?
I mean, what are you in this for? You want power, you want revenge, you know? What is it?
It's simple, Willie. I just want to be free.
Hey, peace. So hooroo, welcome to We Charge Colonialism podcast. You like that, man?
Yes. That's dope. That's dope. Yeah.
I just want the simple things in life, man. Just want to be free, you know. That
that's what it's about.
Absolutely, man. So I'm Ikemba. We Charge Colonialism here. You know, for the first time on We Charge Colonialism. You want to introduce yourself, brother?
Yeah. My name is Mike Spates, aka Just Mike. Got a little video channel I do every now and then when the spirit moves me, drawing the line. I'm just here to share some ideas. Just a brother ready to chop it up and charge colonialism.
Right on, man. Yo, you sound like me, bro. I say that same thing. I'll be like, yo, where the spirit moves me. I say that all the time. That's how I be feeling. You know.
Yeah, I mean, these algorithms will have you going crazy if you try to hear about, you know, people got to post twice a day and you know, put up a video every week. And I was like, I don't have that kind of energy. I like to be where I am, you know, and not be focused on somebody else's schedule. So, you know,
Nah, for sure. And you know, our folks that tap into We Charge Colonialism, man, I got them conditioned for that type of you know, posting, because I post all over. I'm all over the place, man. You might not see me for a month, and I just drop in on you like, hey, we're gonna come with this blueprint for Black Power. But nah, man. I appreciate you jumping on and having this conversation with me. The going back to the intro too. Like is interesting. Like I created that intro. I don't have no skills, man. Like no tech skills when it comes to that stuff. But you know, and I loved it too. I was like, yo, I would never. That's probably the only intro I've ever created. I won't even attempt to do it again. I'm gonna let everybody else handle that. Any and everybody else, man. But for that particular one, I wanted to create. I created that intro for myself for something, you know, for you know, some podcasting a minute ago, and so I knew what I wanted. Like that's all of that is like me. That's my theme right there with all of those clips. Yeah. Like it captures everything about me and what I'm.
It sets the tone well. so yeah, you did a good job.
I appreciate it, man. So man, let's get into this topic, bro.
Let's go.
Diversity, equity, inclusion, and the reason I wanted to chat about this, I was definitely inspired. I mean, this is something that's been around for a long time. This nothing new, but it's been in the news like crazy recently.
Oh, yeah.
and particularly because of the pushback on the right and the introducing of this bill. This, I guess you can call it an anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion bill. So, that was being pushed through the Senate. And there was an exchange because you had some folks on the left who, particularly U.S. Congress woman Ayanna, is it Presley?
Yeah.
Presley. Oh yeah, Presley. Thank you. Who put forth an amendment to the bill. Man, I hate everything about this, bro. To be
honest, so that my first thoughts is like, is this what we doing? Is are we really discussing this right now? I sat and watched 30 minutes of it, and I was like, oh man, we here? This what we at?
Hey, what you do?
I feel you.
You feel like I feel about it, man. Like I hate to see us. For me, it's kind of embarrassing. I'm just gonna be transparent, man, in this conversation we having. Like, I don't know. I feel embarrassed that we doing this. It just feels like, like we're begging for this inclusion. We're asking to be, to be assimilated into the system. We're fighting the oppressor to just be a part of the colony, man. And for forms, there's some other things about this thing, and there's so many different levels to it, though. To be honest, and it's like, where to begin. As a matter of fact, and just so folks, that people know, like this bill, it did go through. I mean, it's not enacted, but it went through the committee. They voted in the committee because there's still a process. I don't know if this will make it through. Well, I don't know.
I mean, I was about to say, I don't know.
Republicans got it on lock right now. They in a position that this thing might be enacted. So I don't even want to say that, and they got their man as president right now. So my fault. Like this thing, I wanted to pull this up really quick.
Yeah. So I mean, why you pulling?
Yeah.
What
you think? Go ahead.
So, like you said, there's a lot of layers to it. The way I look at it is like, if you really pull back away from it and look at the kind of the underpinning kind of like drive of these kind of things, is really like this way that we look at history is this kind of like evolutionary version of history, or this like this promise of America version of history. Like, America started with noble intentions, and it's just got a few stains on its reputation, slavery, Jim Crow, those are just little missteps. But the general trend in America is supposed to be moving towards being a good place, an equitable place, a place where the American dream can be realized or whatever. And I think that this narrative is very insidious, because it's really at the root of how we view people who push for change in this society. And things like what they were talking about in this conference, in this oversight committee, like they kept bringing up, like, we don't need to codify this. We don't need to codify, and like diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's really built on that narrative of like, we're moving that way anyway. What we really need to codify is merits, and people, everybody having equal access to opportunity, not necessarily equal outcomes, when engaging with those opportunities. And so I think it really, at the heart of it, is this narrative of America, like even Dr. King, which I really want to get into because they really talked about, like they had a back and forth about that. But, one of his things he said, the arc of whatever the arc bends towards justice or whatever. This kind of ethos is really built into how people perceive America as this like progressive experiment, this project of America, when historically it's been pretty consistent, and it is a colonial, imperialist, capitalist, racist, like it has been very consistent in what it is, and yet we have this narrative of it's trying to be something else, and it's really just ahistorical. And when we look at these exchanges with these I guess they'd be framed as progressive politicians like Presley, to me it's almost, I don't know, it's like hard to watch, I guess, like you said. It's like it's like hard, embarrassing, man, in a sense, or like difficult to watch. But more than that, I think I take away from it, it's really these rollbacks that the Republican Party is pushing heavily for, which really is, the same thing is done under the Democratic Party. They just do it in a nicer way. But the things that are being pushed for now, it gives cover for feigned progressiveness, I guess. Like people who are really arguing like very middle of the road things start looking progressive. So you have someone like, Presley just making a statement, or like I think the guy named Mfume, one of the other Congress people making the argument like my ancestors were enslaved, and like they come across as like these progressive voices, and I'm like, is this really what we arguing? Like there's nothing
exactly
more substantive things that we
militant.
Yeah, no.
Like these are the militants right here, like in this on the floor arguing, because like the tone that they're the tone that they're speaking to the other side and giving their arguments, putting forth their ideas, and it's like this is who we have, who's supposed to be. And the crazy thing is, like, and I'm saying to myself too, because I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, these people are probably sincere and wanting to advance the interests of Black folks. So I'm trying not to look at them as these like sellouts, right? But at the same time, again, it's still, there's no, the conversation should be about dismantling systems of oppression, right? Dismantling. Absolutely. But of course, that's not a conversation that everybody is going to be in agreement with to have on. Like it would have turned into something else. It might have even gotten physical, man, if they have a real conversation, about what needs to be done. But the conversation for us, it should be about liberation and advancement. But what they're talking about, for me, I'm looking at it, and you're asking. I'm just going to go to the diversity, equity, inclusion, just in general, like even before this conversation is being had. But the idea of wanting to have diversity, equity, and inclusion within the society, and particularly in the workplace, federal workplace, in the workforce in general, is saying that, yes, there's systemic racism. The system is racist. The system is oppressing and exploiting marginalized groups. But we want to make sure that we at least have some representation, right? Like we want people, we at least take some of this. Let's diversify this system of racism. That's how I'm looking at it. Like, not destroy the system. They're talking about, just acknowledge that racism exists. Like, okay, acknowledge, like, then what's the next step? But really quick, this just to pull this up, man, looking at some of this the thoughts of this. This is Michael Cloud and Vance, JD Vance are the people who put forth this dismantle DEI Act. Look at that's the language even in the name of the act. Dismantle DEI.
They're being very transparent about it.
That's how we need to be talking, man. You know,
I mean, the Wall Street Journal just put up a headline saying, how do you deal with terrorism? And it's, well, what's the answer to terrorism? And it's colonialism. Well, like that is like their headline. So it's like very, very, as we move more and more towards an authoritarian state, which is really at the heart of what this DEI attack is about. It's about removing people who might shake up things so that you can have a more monolithic like government where you won't have any internal dissent, essentially. Like everybody's going to toe the line and push forward the agenda. But as you move more, repression is ramping up. You got all these cop cities and things like that. They're going after protesters and charging them with RICO charges and terrorism for showing up at a protest and things. So with that, you can be more transparent. You can just come out and just say the things. Like the quiet parts are said out loud now, and it's kind of like, what you gonna do about it? You know, and it's really like, I think the level of repression makes people fearful of stepping up and doing things, and it makes it a lot easier to frame these conversations in a way that they don't have to dog whistle anymore. They can just say the thing. But like we feel like white people are being discriminated against, being oppressed, and which is the most comical of takes, you know, from what's happening in the world. But yeah, so that's where things are now. They're coming out and saying that, like, in the world we live in, where diversity, equity, and inclusion, which are some of the most benign things that you can be asking for, which should be, these are things that are now points of contention, and it just shows how far right society has been pushed. And it really is like, when you have people like, I mean, I believe Presley and other people they mean well, but they are participating in a way in like the erasure of the actual true left, because they are being propped up and positioned as the voice of the left. You know, like the conservatives think Biden is left. You know, I mean, like they think AOC is like representative of the true left. And so I think, I mean, they're just calling it what it is, you know, and I think there's a benefit to that if we can get our stuff together and we can like get our propaganda machines together and start building institutions.
Yeah. I mean, to your point too, just the way the right has been skillful at sort of just flipping the demands of the left, sort of just like using the same sort of tactics, but able to do it, you know, a lot better though. Like it's something I feel like we were doing in the 50s, like when Malcolm, the Nation of Islam was very good at this. The Nation of Islam in general was good at this, and Malcolm X specifically was very good at, you know, taking these ideas of the colonizer and sort of using it against them. You know, using the same language they use and using it against them. And that's what the right is doing right now. They've been very good at that over the decades, man, being able to take the same language that's being used by those who are part of the revolutionary struggle or you know, or the left just in general. And so, you know, taking things that's benign, like they took woke culture just seems like a negative thing. Like don't associate me with woke culture. I don't, you know, it seems like a bad thing, because the propaganda machine, man, was so good at really just like flipping that upside down, man. But this in particular, if you look at what's being said here, I think like this goes to what we're talking about as well.
My screen is pretty small, so if you could reach, I can.
Let me see if I can make that a little we're not good. I mean, to be honest, like I'm not going to read too much of this anyway. It's just particularly this paragraph right here with the DEI programs masquerade as fairness, while instead of fostering division, inefficiency, and discrimination in our institutions. Like I'll read that again. DEI programs masquerade as fairness, while instead fostering division, inefficiency, and discrimination in our institutions. They waste taxpayer dollars and undermine the merit-based principles that have made America strong. You were talking about this, sir.
I mean, that's what it is. Yeah, I mean, they're like, we are the oppressed ones. We are the marginalized ones. You know, we are the victims of, you know, this whatever woke agenda or whatever. Like they're really, they've really. I mean, even the grasping on, like the evoking of multiple times in like the 30-minute segment that I saw of the Oversight Committee, they evoked the name of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it's like it's gaslighting on like a expert level, because they know it's going to get people riled up, but it's also like, it's almost like flaunting. It's like showing like, this is how powerful we are. We own the legacy of your freedom fighters, essentially. And I think it's very intentionally done to. I mean, like there's this old saying that, you know, a person dies twice. Right? The first time you die is when you physically transition, and the second time you die is when the last person who knows your name speaks your name. Right, and so like once your name starts being spoken, you're gone. And that's pretty sad, but I think it's even sadder when your name gets captured and used for purposes that like are against what you stood for in life. And that's how it is with King. His name is captured and repurposed. And now King has become somehow, in their mind, King is like the voice of getting rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's really like it's an amazing thing that people are sitting in Congress and actually like having these absurd, ridiculous discussions. And it's important because we need, the society is racist and people do get discriminated against, but then also it's also a distraction from like you were bringing up, like real systemic change. And I think that I think that they are really, really good. These conservatives, you know, the right in this country is really good at getting us tied up in conversations that ultimately are beside the point. Because really, okay, let's say you argue and you make your point and that this bill doesn't get passed. Nothing substantive has changed, you know, for our people. It's like we're fighting backwards, basically. You know, we're fighting the same battle they were fighting in 1962, 63 to get the bill passed. You know, when we should be beyond that now. You know, we should be on new things. And so it's really unfortunate to see.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I wanted to have this Malcolm X clip queued up, man. We're gonna have to have this conversation again, so that I can bring that clip in. But when Malcolm was at the Oxford debate, and he was talking about it, and he mentioned this in several other kind of interviews and speeches, but particularly at the Oxford debate, he talked about civil rights legislation and how that there were already laws on the books, you know, that there was civil rights legislation that passed. And despite there being civil rights legislation, the racist is still committing the same atrocities. Still, they're breaking the laws. They're still not recognizing the constitutional rights of African Americans, of Black people in the United States. So he said, man, he's like, you know, you're going to keep putting laws on top of law. They didn't respect the first laws that you put on, but what makes you think that they're going to, you know, be bound or respect any other laws you put on the books? And this is part of his argument about civil rights and human rights and so forth, right? Yeah. And you know, going beyond the states, but but that's to the point you're making as far as the same fight in the 60s. You know, going back to what Malcolm, another thing that Malcolm talked about, which didn't come to pass as far as just like the bloodshed that would take place as a result of Black people integrating into this system or wanting to integrate into the system. Because he said, you know, we fight to thoroughly integrate into the system, there's going to be that backlash, which historically there always has been. You know, even if you go back to the Red Summer, I mean, there's so many different examples you can give. And I mean, there was a backlash, but it wasn't necessarily like this civil war, you know, that took place in this country, this race war that took place, you know.
I mean, it was there, but they did it in a fairly organized way. You had things like the urban renewal program where they built highways and dissected communities and you know, and like figured out ways. I mean, the thing is, oppression is legal, right? It's always legal, right? So because and so like the way that we look at law just needs to shift completely, because we keep having these, even looking at look at the UN and what's happening to Palestinians and stuff like that. Like even on the international level, law is going to serve those who are in power. And I think that you know, coming off of they figured out ways to just what they were talking about. Like they figured out ways to codify their position without it being like the overt kind of like mob violence that characterized like the Jim Crow era, or like, you know, just post, you know, after slavery, you know, like all of the lynchings and things like that. They kind of figured out a better way to be violent, essentially. And I think that's why we didn't see it in our face, the bloodshed, but we saw the same level of destruction of people's lives, same level of displacement, and the same level of exploitation. We just saw it, you know, mass imprisonment and like things like that. They just figured out ways to commit the violence in what they frame as a more sanitized way, but in what we experienced as it just outright violence. And so I think the bloodshed was there. It just was rather one-sided. And that also is.
Hey, I'm in agreement. You know what I'm saying? I think that's an accurate description of what took place. It wasn't necessarily like this all-out, you know, race war. Because the way Malcolm was putting it, you know, it was just like, man, it's going to be Armageddon. It's going to be Armageddon. But you know, when we look at it in a more practical, you know, the sense, the way that you put it, not saying that because I think he was on point. It was just the way that it was going to look, you know. But that's where we are now. You know, I feel like when I'm looking at these conversations about diversity, equity, inclusion that we're having, and amending a bill, you know, or getting the oppressor to recognize that, hey, your system is racist, and you know, and there's systemic racism. They looking like, nah, what you talking about? Who was? I don't know if it was Higgins. One of the. I mean, let's pull this up. As a matter of fact, that's what we do. I'm gonna just play some of it, and because I think this will be fun.
Just get some commentary.
The clip that you I'm about to share now. The clip that you were talking about too, with the King exchange.
Yeah,
my man said, I will use Dr. King.
How dare you? He's like, this is the oppression we're talking about. You won't let me say King's name. I'm just like, wow.
Hey, man, they was making us look bad up there. I ain't gonna front, man. It wasn't looking good. So that's good. You able to see that?
Yeah.
Norms and social structures that work together to maintain racial inequities. This is not a matter of opinion. It is a matter of fact. that originates in the founding of this nation and has implications to this very day. Our government has been deeply intertwined with this system, from enshrining slavery and the 3/5 compromise into the United States Constitution to implementing redlining, segregation, and other discriminatory policies based on race. Now, I know that talking about the existence of racism in America makes some uncomfortable, but remember, this is a bill that you all brought up. So to my colleagues, let me just say that acknowledging these truths is not an act of blame. It is an act of responsibility. We must take responsibility. If you are serious about ending reverse racism, you need to acknowledge that it exists in the first place. And that means voting in favor of this amendment.
What you think about that reverse racism?
Gentle lady yields back.
I think she at another point she kind of, or maybe it wasn't her, maybe somebody else brought it up, but they drew out the fact that they start off talking about racism doesn't exist, and then they go on to talk about reverse racism. And she brought up the fact that how can you reverse something that doesn't exist, right? So if racism doesn't exist, then that means then de facto reverse racism can't exist, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't have the opposite of something that doesn't exist. So I thought she made like a, she had like a little bit of a gotcha moment with that. But again, the fact that we're even having this conversation is really the problem, right? Because like, to me, if something so fundamental and obvious and so grounded and factual as the existence of racism, not even currently, okay, but historically in America, if we can't agree that existed, and that's essentially what they're arguing, is that we never needed these things. We never needed DEI. Like we never needed diversity, equity, inclusion. If someone can't like acknowledge the existence of like systemic issues that make these things like necessary, then we can't even have a conversation. It's like we exist on different planes of reality, essentially. And to me, we spend too much time engaging in conversations with people about like fundamental truth, like, and this is where, the whole was one of the clever things they did during the last Trump, presidency, was they started talking about alternative facts and things like that. And like there really was an assault on the very concept of truth. And that's a very powerful thing, because if you get people to believe that facts aren't facts, and you can have your own alternative facts to the facts, then you can get people caught up in these like circular arguments about ridiculous things, like whether or not America has had historically a problem with diversity, equity, and inclusion. That is a ridiculous thing for us to be talking about, and yet Congress is spending, time and energy having these serious discussions about whether this is a real thing. And it's all done in this very polished, dignified kind of setting, as to giving credibility to an argument that's really just like, for real? Like we really doing this? I second in the chair, I concede my time, and like, give me back your time, and like all of this pomp and circumstance around an absurd discussion that normally would you man, get out of here. you would just like move on if somebody started talking like that.
Shirley Chisholm, man, in her book, what is it, Unbossed, I think it's titled. She talked about it, or it might have been in her other book. She wrote 2 books, but I remember her speaking about just being on the Senate floor, and it really being a circus, man. That's how she described it. She described like this sort of thing that's going on, like nothing's really getting done. But to the point which you raised, I think in this clip right here, they're actually going to have that exchange in regards to whether racism exists or not. And to be honest, the way that I'm looking at, I feel like so much context is needed, because sometimes we get these clips on social media, and it do seem like, oh, she got him with that one. You know what I'm saying? Look at the sister go. But then when you look at it in the whole context, it's like, damn, did she really get him with that? Because like the rebuttal is just so strong, man, in my opinion. Because I feel like was taking place, the way that this is looking to me is that transparency. The left wasn't being very transparent in what they were arguing as far as like what the amendment is, and what their real argument is, and so I feel like the clarity in that that language may have been in the amendment, but the way that they are making their argument and presenting it is if we just want y'all to acknowledge that racism exists.
Which is about the lowest bar.
Yeah, but now they like, hey, if that's all, we acknowledge that racism is. So I'm gonna continue to play it so folks know what I'm talking about.
Back. I'll recognize myself. Oppose the amendment, which adds a rule of construction to the bill's amendments to the Civil Rights Act to state that nothing in the bill should be interpreted as denying that the federal government has implemented policies that perpetuate systematic racism. Nothing in the bill speaks to the issue. Therefore, no rule of construction is necessary. I urge my colleagues to oppose the amendment. Any other members seek recognition? Seeing none. The question is on the amendment number 2 offered by Ms. Presley. All those in favor?
Yeah.
All those?
Can I be recognized?
Are you seeking recognition?
Yes.
Like I gotta listen to you speak again.
We'd already recognized you to speak. I guess somebody you would have. Can you yield?
You want to ignore her so bad, bro?
I would yield time to the gentlewoman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Mfume yields his time to Ms. Presley.
Thank you. Ignoring systemic racism will not make it go away. By supporting this amendment, Congress can acknowledge a truth and set us on a path to fairness, justice, and progress for all. If Republicans are genuinely interested in denying racism exists against Black people, Indigenous people, and all people of color, it is a reflection of your values and explains the policies they put forth, including this bill. Now, we acknowledge that progress has been made. The progress is real and worth celebrating, but that doesn't mean that our work is done. Recognizing the injustices and their impacts is essential to building on that progress and ensuring that it lasts. I yield back.
Gentle yields back. Any
you feel some type of way about that?
Seeing none.
I mean,
I just want a point of clarification.
Progress has been made, though, right?
I mean, it's I don't know. It's one of those things where, I mean, it's what you just said. Like when the bar is so low of what you're asking for, and then they make you claw and scream and protest and fight for it, and then they hand you your little cookie and they say like, here you go. Can we really call it progress? It's like it's the same thing that they do over and over again, where we try to. It goes back to the whole respectability kind of approach to organizing, where you try to think of a demand that's like palatable to these people. And then you fight and you fight and you fight for it, and then you suffer so much for it, right? And then eventually, when it becomes expedient, you get it as a concession, and then you turn around and say like, yeah, we're making progress. We made progress. When really it's the same thing insurance companies do. It's like delay. They just delay. That's their first tactic, is just delay. They spend time waiting to get back to you. They say, oh, we have to review it. It's the same tactics used by all these oppressive institutions to really keep us caught up in this slow burn that makes us feel like, okay, if we just wait a little longer, we'll get it. When in reality, we'll never, and in fact, every time we move forward a little bit, it's only a matter of time before they start rolling it back. I mean, it took them longer than usual to start rolling back, what we're looking at now, affirmative action, and like some of the gains that were made, in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It took them a little. I mean, they've been doing it, but now they're just ramping up they're doing it. And so for part of her argument to be kind of like, yeah, we've made some progress. Like it's just such a weak, like diluted, and like you say, it lacks. Yeah, and like you say, it lacks transparency. It's like, can we just be honest about what this is, and argue from that point of view? And it's just frustrating.
That's why I respect Charles Barron, man. Shout out to my comrade Charles Barron. If he was on the floor, oh my goodness, he would have been like, "Oh, racist," for even, he would have let him have it, trying to maintain this colonial system, and he'd have definitely went in. But let me get some more of this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are addressing, this bill is being proposed to address reverse racism, yet we're not willing to acknowledge racism.
What just a point? What are you doing here?
I'm asking for clarification. If the bill that the amendment that Ms. Presley is proposing suggests that we just simply acknowledge that racism exists, and the fundamental point of your legislation is to deal with reverse racism, then I should ask you, what are we doing here?
I would assume you're asking Ms. Presley the question.
No, I'm asking you.
You might as well ask Ms. Presley the question.
Well, maybe I should ask the author of this legislation, Mr. Cloud.
Yes, ma'am. I apologize. I was reading.
Okay. Just trying to get clarity here. If we cannot agree that racism exists, but this legislation you're proposing is to deal with reverse racism, why are we here?
Hate seeing ads? It's almost 2025. You don't have to anymore.
Well, I should have downloaded.
The internet is almost unusable.
I think you answered the question in your question.
I don't think I did. Reverse racism is included in the language, yet you do not want to acknowledge that racism exists, which is simply Ms. Presley's request here.
We have discussed that over and over. There's been no denouncement or statement that racism doesn't exist. We've talked about the fact that it indeed does, and it's a horrible condition of the human heart of some people that still does exist.
So you are supportive of Ms. Presley's amendment, then? It sounds like you are.
This rule of construction that's, by the way, being given to us at the last minute, one, us coming through figuring out what the intended consequences are, as these were not submitted in advance, as my bill was, is one of the challenges. There's no legal definition of what systemic racism is. I think we would want to talk about what government, what policies, and all those sort of things. So this is a pretty broad statement that I'm not sure I could support in the time I have to look at this.
I will yield to Ms. Presley.
Thank you to the gentlelady from Ohio. This bill is all about racism, which is exactly why my amendment is relevant. And the congressional record needs a clear vote on my amendment so that the American people will know where members of this committee stand on this issue. For all people who know racism exists and want to end it, I urge you to vote yes. I yield back.
All right. Any other members seek recognition? Seeing none.
Mr. Chairman.
Chair recognizes Mr. Higgins.
Mr. Chairman,
this is the guy.
Setting aside the rule of construction in the interest for transparent and candid response to my colleagues' query, the amendment is poorly written. It uses past tense and current tense on the same subject matter without indicating a shift in time. You're not just saying in a statement that we acknowledge that racism is a part of human nature and exists as part of the human construct. Of course, the corruption is born of the heart of man, not the mechanisms of man. Every one of us would recognize that racism exists throughout human history, in every culture, in every land. The sun never sets, nor has it.
So this is a failure too.
On some manifestation of racism throughout the history of man. Yes, there you go.
This is a
statement in
debating
oversight
failure.
committee, part of the historical record now. But
say that again. This is a what?
This is a debating failure because they two people in a row talked about racism as being a matter of the human heart, and like there's no pushback on like racism. Like they could have offered, and then one of them, the one before, I guess Higgins, like he said that you mentioned systemic racism, but like we didn't even have a definition for that. They should have had a definition like ready right then and there and say, this is what systemic racism is. Do you agree that this exists in America? It's like little, like if you're going to present an amendment, you should already have game planned like how they're going to object to it.
That's
the other thing that they
want.
Yeah, that's it. And the other thing that they do is like they have this very like, they go straight to personal insults when they don't have an actual like argument, and it kind of distracts people. So it talked about how unprofessionally it's written and using grammar mistakes or past tense, present tense. But even that, like it's like there should be pushback on the way they're being characterized, and there's none. And so even though you get her asking this question, there's no defense of the line of questioning, and like that there's no. In fact, even the way she asked the question was rather ambiguous. Like it doesn't. Yeah. It's easy for them to escape answering it. Because she doesn't really like go at them on like and even in the amendment it should define systemic racism. Instead of just mentioning it. And so it's just, but again, why are we even having this debate? Which
is the bigger question. Question. But we critiquing just
it's happening.
It's all good. It's all good. And I agree with you. Just her point, which is like that. I got you, which you see on social media, and you'll be like, she got, but no, she should have like really went in and like broke it down, like explain why, this is a silly bill. Like this bill doesn't make any sense. And you're talking about reverse racism, like elaborate.
Even that, like what is reverse racism? Like, did they define it? They didn't define it.
Exactly.
So like they're telling her she needs to define things. But they use some terminology that they didn't define, and so it's just it's little things they can like poke at, to like instead of just having this one kind of like viral gotcha moment to really push them to give like, I mean, she brought it up in saying that we want it on record. Like Presley brought it up, we want it on record what people feel about this. But I think it's more meaningful if you get people to actually, you elaborate. And instead of like a vote, yes or no, get people to actually elaborate on how they're viewing things. And that's something you can more effectively hold them accountable to. Because it's like, you voted yes or no, they could just say, well, I interpreted it like this. But if you have them on record saying, systemic racism isn't an issue in America or something like that, then you can more at least, hold the fire to them and be like, you said this, but they didn't get there. Never got to that point.
They never got to that point, and that's because, and I'm glad he used the term transparency, because everybody's tiptoeing around like what the real issue is with the bill and with the amendment. Like right now there's a lot of tiptoeing, but the more they talk, and when you watch the whole thing, like the more they talk, the more transparent everybody becomes on what they're looking for. But to also, to your point about the legal definition of systemic racism, which they should have had, and he also spoke about specificity, because he said, what policies and legislation are you referring to?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so when you say systemic racism, are you just saying like the United States of America, the system is systemically racist, or is there certain, you know, institutions? And so that right there, because I don't, well, not that I don't think, I know that they would never admit to like the United States of America as an institution being systemic racist, right?
Of course not. Of course not.
And so that's what they like, man. You would never catch me on the record saying that. But that's what they're going to get to. They're going.
But your amendment, the good lady has introduced an amendment which I oppose because it's very poorly written, and it's quite condemning of the American people and American society. What her amendment is saying is that prior acts of our nation and our forefathers before us have perpetuated systemic racism that currently exists in our country. You're asking us to say that America is systemically racist, and that's not the same as saying that just admit that racism exists, which is what you're stating when you discuss this. But in writ, it's quite different. So I oppose the amendment. Appreciate the effort, but no.
Appreciate that.
There you go. That's that personal hit. It's like
you have a car,
that condescending.
do you have a clean driving record? Did you know you could pay as
any other member seek recognition?
Appreciate that effort.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Wow.
It's a fact.
Hey, and writ, you know, and that's what they read. You're not going to get this past us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're going to read. Yeah. It's all the youth out there. That's why reading is fundamental.
Fascinating colloquy now, and I wanted to just suggest one thought for Mr. Higgins. I actually think this is a very well-written amendment. It says nothing in this act shall be construed to deny that the federal government has implemented policies that perpetuate systemic racism. And I'll give you one good example, Mr. Higgins. I think
it doesn't say has implemented policies that have perpetuated systemic racism, nor does it say has implemented policies that have perpetuated racism. It identifies systemic racism.
Can I give you
past tense versus current?
I'm happy to have inaudibly yielded to you on that point, but let me just reclaim my time for 1 sec, because I want to suggest a really excellent book for people who are interested in just this question of how the federal government itself has implemented policies that indeed perpetuate, in the present tense, systemic racism. The book is called The Color of Law, A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America. And it's about federal housing policy and the FHA and veterans policy, all of which deliberately segregated America and deliberately gave certain kinds of benefits to whites that were not available to blacks, and then deliberately and consciously redlined areas. I read it, I think about, 6 or 7 years ago. So but forgive me for not being able to detail more precisely what it's talking about. But the author, Richard Rothstein, explains how federal housing policies in the 1940s and 50s explicitly mandated segregation and destroyed the capacity of African American families to be in integrated neighborhoods and of white families to be in integrated neighborhoods. That was a deliberate policy. So, I mean, it would be nice to believe that when the 13th Amendment was adopted and slavery was abolished and the 14th Amendment was passed, that everything was okay. There was an effort in the Reconstruction, and again with the radical Republicans' efforts to transfer resources to the recently freed population to lift people up who had been downtrodden by law for centuries. But then Reconstruction was undone, and we got into Jim Crow and poll taxes, literacy tests, grandfather clauses and the whole
Hey, I appreciate
system of
all this.
inequality
The way he
in
ended
law,
it
which
is so weak.
lasted at least up until the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, but it didn't end there either. And so there's a real history to it, and I think that's what makes all of these issues so difficult. And I know that there is a theory which is, well, let's not focus on it. Let's wave a magic wand and say everything's okay, as opposed to continuing to engage in inclusive and open efforts to redress the injuries of the past and to move forward. And look, I agree with people who think that, you know, bureaucracies are awkward. All bureaucracies are awkward. There's no doubt about that. Everybody finds bureaucracy awkward, but what the process we've been going through as a country is far better than what we've seen in other places in the world, like racial stratification and violence and tribal violence and apartheid and all of those things. So this is what we get in the greatest multiracial, multicultural, multi-ethnic constitutional democracy efforts to be conscious of the past and to move forward. So I like Ms. Presley's amendment. I think it's actually very well worded, and I definitely plan to vote for it.
There it is.
Well, the
That great lie of American progress and the promise of America.
Like he negated everything he just said.
Yeah, he did. I mean, not to mention, he mentioned apartheid. Segregation is apartheid. So he's saying that like America didn't have apartheid. Like America did have. It did it. And functionally, America is still rather segregated, especially when you look at urban areas. You know, like so yeah. I mean, it's
and he's talking about, you know, these things too still existing in places around the world, you know, today. But here in the United States, you know, like we done made it past all of those things, but now we just need to acknowledge that past so that, you know, we can move forward, I guess, like as a people. It's sort of like this acknowledgement of it. And I don't know, it could be this thing where, hey, we want to get them on the record to acknowledge these things because it opens up the door to say, okay, this did happen. We all agree that this happened. And now we're saying like, okay, so these are the effects of these things. So, you know, it's again, going back to the transparency, right? Where, you know, they're not being fully transparent. They just want you to think that this is all we want you to do. I think you kind of alluded to that earlier too.
Yeah. And it's a failure to connect, right? Like how he ended it. The weakest part about it was that he talked about, he got up to a certain point in the past and he stopped and didn't like continue it on to, he talked about like redlining and things like that, but he didn't continue on through all the things that happened in the 70s, 80s, 90s, you know, early 2000s.
21st century.
Like
it's happening now. Are we saying that these things are not happening?
Yeah, I mean, so it's like it stopped there. And that actually adds credence to their argument, like, we need to just let this go. Like, this is old stuff. It's holding us back, as opposed to him, like, showing, like, keep drawing the line of how these events in the past continue to be, to push in this direction. He didn't bring up mass incarceration. He didn't bring up, like very common things that have happened, you know, like the whole issue with, like, you know, welfare and like, you know, all the Clinton policies, the Biden policies back in the day, Bush's domestic policies, like he didn't tie anything to the present. He didn't bring up current statistics about where Black people are, you know, like and pretty much in all the bad statistics, we're like up at the top or near the top. And so by not bringing it current, his argument essentially just plays into really kind of bolstering their argument, which is kind of like, yeah, America did this in the past, which they kind of like don't even want to acknowledge that, but they're like, you're harping on that. We're trying to do what's good for now and be fair now. We're beyond that. Yeah. So I think, yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, it's the same thing we're seeing from all these people. And, you know, I characterize it as like poor debating, but that's a good faith analysis. When in reality, like, it's not poor debating, it's people knowing which lines not to cross. You know, if you want to keep your tenure, if you want to stay in these positions of power, you know that there are certain lines that you cannot cross. And so, like, it's not bad debating. It's just like people say, oh, you know, Kamala Harris ran, you know, she had some mistakes in her campaign. She didn't really focus enough on the Israel-Palestine issue. Like, that's not a campaign mistake. That's understanding where the line is drawn, and you do not cross that. You do not cross that line, even if it means you losing office. You lose the campaign. There are lines you don't cross if you want to continue on existing in your state of privilege that you exist in. And that's really these like kind of like they start to make a good point and taper off. It's an art that is taught. Navigating these white spaces, you learn how to kind of like hold on to a little bit of yourself, but not give them spoonfuls, but not give them too much. And I think it just comes out, even in the most well-meaning people, they know I can't say certain things. I can't be honest. I can't be transparent, you know, about certain things. And for some people, eventually they just stop thinking the things altogether. You know, like they start to buy into the mythology that's around them. But for those who are well-meaning and standing up for what's right, I think they also have to make determinations about, like, well, this is what puts food on my table. This is what allows me to live in empire and have some relative privilege. I'm not going to give that up. You know, like, and so I know I can say so much, you know, in public and still be allowed to keep my position, because the progressives play an important role of, like, giving people a beacon to look at, some hope within the system. And so, like, people know what their role is in this process, and they choose to, and I don't want to, like you say, I don't want to use the term like sellouts or things like that, but it's they make choices based on what is going to allow them to still maintain the way of life that they have. And if they weren't willing to compromise in the ways that they do, they would have never risen to the position that they're in, you know, in the first place.
Absolutely.
So, like,
I mean, great point. I mean, yo, you said it all right there. Be honest, like looking at the exchange between both sides, they're presenting their argument. First of all, they're playing the game. First of all, you know, they're playing the same game, and they're having this debate in the cordial. I can respect it in a cordial way, but at the same time, like, those are really the adversaries on the other side, man. And I don't get that feeling that you're treating the right as adversaries, man.
No,
you're not.
In fact, you hear the opposite. We got to reach across the aisle, and they're very clear on their side. But but they're like, no, we got to reach across the aisle. Even Harris, one of her campaign promises is, I'm going to make sure I have a Republican in the cabinet, and I'm just like, wow. Like, she's doing tours with Liz Cheney, the Cheneys of all people. It's just this amazing.
Yeah, you get Dick Cheney endorsement, man. Like, that's like getting the devil's endorsement, man.
Yeah, that's for real.
Hey, but a lot of us, how soon many of us forget, though. You know, of course, like, you know, with our political education, we on it. But when it comes to, like, the masses of folks, man, masses of Black people, who are really looking at, like, Dick Cheney, the endorsement, they embrace that endorsement. Oh yeah, you know, that's going to help us get votes. Like, nah, you can have that
for real. You would think that would be like a nightmare. Like, please don't come out and endorse me. Like,
hell yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but all of this is underpinned by an ahistorical population. You need a population who has a very short memory span, who doesn't really, is just not politically educated, not even like historical events that happen in our own lifetime that we witnessed. We have to like be indoctrinated in a way where we forget those things. And so people who were like the enemy, you know, like 10, 15 years ago, now they're like Bush and Obama, they're hugging and having all these like how you put these, you know, you have this image of Obama is supposed to be this beacon of hope and progress and stuff like that. And they hugging and laughing and having fun with Bush, who was like pretty well regarded as like a war criminal and like within like, and so it's like how do you? But again, they all different sides of the same game, and so they know how to play the game. They couldn't get to where they were if they didn't know how to play the game. And so when it comes down to it, you're gonna see them skirt that line, you know, and it's rather graceful in a way, you know, like to be able to come out and say these things and appear as very progressive, but not go over, not do anything that's gonna really like bring too much blowback on you, and so you keep your position of privilege essentially, and whether people are consciously making these decisions or it's just like the way it is, you know, just how culture works, you know, like it's different for different people. I mean, some people are very consciously saying, I'm going to hold my spot and I'm going to do whatever I have to do to hold my spot. And other people they drank the Kool-Aid, as they say. They kind of bought into this narrative that what they're doing is for the greater good, you know, and it helps, I guess, some, you know, but in terms of systemic change, no, it's not going to change.
No. I mean, and that goes back to my original point, which really was part of the motivation behind wanting to even have this discussion, is this push for this diversity, equity, inclusion. Into what? Into what? And for who? You know, and that was part of the criticism of the civil rights movement, and you know, which many would argue was a bourgeois, you know, black bourgeoisie movement, you know, looking for opportunities, right, for a certain class. And not to say that, yes, you know, the fight is to create opportunities as well as for those who are from other classes, but it was definitely it was a bourgeois-led, you know, movement when the struggle was for integration, more jobs, and so forth, man. You know,
for sure,
more cabinet positions, you know, things like that. And so, like, when I look at this diversity, equity, inclusion, you have that. So we're asking for what these corporations, these companies, the federal government to set aside a few jobs for marginalized groups. And then what happens? It becomes sort of a competition between the marginalized. Now the oppressor fighting each other for those small pool of opportunities that are being set aside for them. You know?
For sure.
So who should be, who's more marginalized, who's more oppressed now? Should it be, you know, women? Should it be blacks, Native Americans, Indians, so forth? Like, you know, now Native Americans aren't getting enough of these jobs. And so it's crazy, man. But that's how
I mean, you're seeing it already with, you know, now there's these lawsuits against Harvard, Yale, I think Princeton. I don't know if Princeton's in it, but like, from Asian families who were used as like, they were the ones they found a few Asian families who would file suits against affirmative action in college recruitment. And now that the bill's passed or whatever, and you can't have affirmative action in college acceptance, Asian enrollment has dropped, you know, significantly, you know, in these like, especially these top tier institutions. So now you have these families who are suing these schools, but I'm like, you kind of asked for this, you know, like that there was, you know, it was split. So it wasn't like all Asians agreed one way or the other, but there was a large segment of the Asian population who were like, we need to do away with this. And it's this whole pitting minorities against each other, you know, and essentially like, well, we're doing pretty well, You know, so we don't have to worry about it. We want more spots. And then it turns out that as soon as they get rid of the safeguards, they lose spots. And now they're like, what's up? You know, like they dropped like 7 or 8%, depending on the institution, you know, in enrollment in one year. You know, and it's really it's because they're like, instead of attacking, so to get at the heart of the real systemic issue, you got to attack legacy. You got to attack people who buy their way into these institutions, who take up, I think it's like half of the new enrollment of these like Ivy League schools in particular is like legacy students, you know. And so like, if you really want to do something to open up more spots, then that's who you would attack. But no, it's like, let's attack these other minorities. And let's say that they are the problem and they are taking the spots, you know. And so, I mean, it's definitely a you know, it's quite, I mean, divide and conquer is tried and true. You know, it just is. It is. Right. Yeah. So
that's what, man, the propaganda, you know, again, Malcolm X, you know, he talks about the power of the media, right?
For sure.
You know, and it had your enemies looking like your friends and your friends looking like your enemies. And, you know, the way that they're able, you know, to control the narrative and have something that that is to your benefit look like it isn't beneficial, you know, to do, and something that is like unfavorable to you, you know, look like, making it look like that is a beneficial thing to have in your life, you know, a beneficial policy in the name of whatever, in the name of freedom, in the name of rights, and so forth, you know. But you know, Dr. Emerson Wilson, he talked about this with like the population, when they talk about overpopulation, right? And this overpopulation and consumption, trying to make that connection. And so, you know, the population needs to be reduced. But he's like, hey, you know, he makes a great, you know, a cogent argument, I think, in regards to like who is overproducing, who is overconsuming. You know, it's the minority that is overconsuming. So if anybody needs to be reduced, it needs to be those people. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. It's like recycling, right? They say, oh, do your civic duty, recycle, you know, and they sold people on this campaign a personal responsibility and like, you are the problem. But if everybody recycled their little plastic bottles and stuff like that, it wouldn't change the amount of toxic waste that these corporations are dumping into the ocean.
Right.
And like they are the culprits, you know, and not to mention the majority, they say like 70% of what people put in the recycle bin doesn't even get recycled. So it's like they get us caught up in these schemes where we just ignore like the culprit in the room, you know, like the people who are really causing the problem, which is this small minority of people, you know, who just need to go. Like they don't need to be here anymore. You know,
bro, the whole system is illogical, man. It's all illogical.
So which brings me to a point I wanted to make earlier was like, so I made this video about like the 6 keys to becoming a danger to oppression. And one of the keys was that you have to make demands that are unreasonable within the current system. And one of the things that we get trapped in when we don't have transparency about what we want, and we're not very clear about advocating what we want, is that we set ourselves up for like them like giving us some benign concession later on. And I think that we need to be more clear about like just come out and say it with your chest and say full-throated like what it is that we are advocating for, because it raises the contradictions. It forces people to really look beyond the system, because the system can't supply certain things. So like, you know, when we talk about like, even, so this is a touchy subject, but we talk about like reparations. I think it's very important for people to, you know, like fight for reparations and the different ways that can look. But on the other hand, it's like, if we're talking about reparations, like the definition of the word, like something that is supposed to repair the situation that we're in, the U.S. government cannot give us reparations. They cannot repair the damage that has been done and that it is being done to us, as a people. And so, like, there's nothing that they could give other than their own demise, that would put us on the path to reparations. And so I caution people to be very careful about, not getting ourselves caught up in a situation where we are just telling them what our next big concession is going to be, right? With reparations, because we're going to fight, and repression is going to pick up, and so is resistance, because repression breeds more resistance. And so it's going to come to a head and get to a point where it's like, okay, we got to get something. And all of a sudden you're going to see these reparations bills pass that really don't give nothing, that don't redistribute wealth or any kind of thing. Yeah. So it's coming. And it's going to get people caught up in this whole, like big payback kind of thing, instead of recognizing that they only we can repair us, from what's been done. We just need them to be out of the way. And so I think, it's just one of those things we have to be, when the bar is so low, when it's like, I just need you to recognize that racism exists. If that's the bar, then it's like, they'll eventually be like, okay, it exists. And then they'll continue on with their agenda.
Just set it on the floor. You probably won't put it in writing, but
sure.
Let the record reflect.
The record that no one is ever going to look at again or read, but what the law says, it's not that.
Yeah, man. It's I'm glad you brought up the topic of reparations. There's been so much going on around this topic in Philadelphia. I'm on a Philadelphia reparations task force. I was asked to join the task force by a brother that I know just from organizing, an elder who was on it, but he felt like, I guess, like with his limitations, technology, technical limitations that he has and so forth, he asked me if I would take on that position for him. We would still work together, but he rather, me to get in that position. Plus it could, it would help as well in regards to like my research, because I'm looking to publish some things anyway, and this would be good because I'm basically chairing the Atlantic World Committee, Atlantic World History Committee. And so my task is to provide the historical data for the report. And that's all we're doing. We're really putting together a report, which is, I guess, like I ask, questions like, what is this about? And all, I'm in the space asking some serious questions. We just doing a report. Like, what's the next steps? Are we going to educate the people about this? Are we, the people going to get involved? Like, what are we doing? What's the end game? And there's definitely like so many contradictions. But like for me, I felt like I just wanted to be involved in this to get to at least do the research and have that information, right, for educational purposes. And because I'm with you in regards to like reparations that we really need would really transform the system. It would have to transform the system. You know what I'm saying? Because the balance of power would shift. It would, because they're not going to be able to give us what we really deserve in regards to what was lost. Being a part of this system, and it's more than just money. It's more than just cash when we're talking about reparations. So, with that being said, man, I definitely want to build with you too more about this, because even me being a part of this task force and going to be a part of this struggle to, I'm assuming, I hope I ain't just doing this for my health to get reparations, right? In Philadelphia, but like, what should it really look like? Like, what should that demand really be? Because we're working with the city council, and the city council isn't going to go but so far. I already know that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, And I'm not knocking reparations, like so. For
nah,
those,
you
I mean, I think
that,
I think that there are different fights, different fronts, and like like our path to liberation, it isn't clearly charted, and so like people who want to put their energy into certain, as long as you're being realistic about the limitations of something, then it's a strategic, it's strategy. It's just like the tactic of nonviolence, of like like it's a strategic choice, a misguided one, essentially. The pacifist strategy, but I mean, they gave it a shot, and what happened, but it's a strategic choice. So I'm not going to knock people who like historically chose that route. Like some people, like it's all about the Black Power movement, civil rights movement. Those are some chumps, and it's like, well. First of all, you're not a chump if you showing up on the street in Alabama, walking down the street with hoses and and dogs and mobs waiting for you down down the street. So like but people I think that reparations is something that should be organized around, that should be pushed, and at any place that it seems like a realistic possibility, on a lower level, on the state level, county level, or whatever, then go for it by any means. Just have a plan in place to make sure that whatever comes in, it's used in a way that's going to push things towards actual liberation. And not look at reparations as reparations is not the path to liberation. But reparations, if it can be achieved anywhere, if it seems feasible to someone, then go for it. But just recognize, like, this is just for us to get a little bit more resources, so that then we can like get better organized and push forward towards actual real systemic change, towards actual revolution, towards actual liberation. And so in that sense, go for it. I think like I said, there's a lot of us, there's a lot of people, and a lot of ways to push the needle, in the right direction. Any way that people genuinely feel that, well, I can't say any way. Okay. If people are politically educated and there's a lane that they feel that they can best, like serve as a catalyst in our struggle, then more power to you, because that's your calling. Other people will have their calling. And I think we should all, just look for ways to collaborate and connect with each other, and just not lose sight of the actual goal. And that's my caution with reparations, is don't keep your eye on the prize. Don't lose sight of the actual goal, which is actually to create a situation where we can have some restoration and repair from all of this, these generations of trauma that we've been through.
Yeah, those spaces, definitely have to be created to give that political education. That's part of the organizing that I'm doing now too, man. Among like other things, I feel like I'm doing. I need to back.
You got a lot going on.
But the education piece is important to me, though. Like I'm definitely going to be doing more teachings. Just more I already have the program, the training, the skill building, like training and community organizing programs we're doing in Brooklyn at the college, and that's I always look, I call it my project Uhuru. It's like they got the Project 25. I'm like, this project Uhuru, because like those tactics that they are using to put people in positions of leadership and power, to take back the White House, to take back the country and make America great again. Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. Our folks is doing the same thing, which we should be doing anyway, Absolutely. But we have to, like, I feel like it's going to be a concerted effort. We have to be very intentional. And, when we're doing political education and getting people involved, like we can't get caught up. I feel like we are doing too much of this work in silos, and we're too focused on, membership and this and that. Now we got to educate people, man. Educate as many people as we can. And, when their consciousness raised, they're going to be looking to be a part of organizations. I sought out an organization because of the level of consciousness I began to I began to come into sort of this knowledge, just gaining information, this knowledge of or awareness, I should say, of the political environment that I'm a part of, and being able to define these things and so forth. So now I'm looking for organization. It wasn't, me hearing like somebody speak about the contradictions, and because if I probably would have gravitated towards that and joined, but would I have stuck around if I probably been like, nah, I'm out. This ain't for me. And just like backed out of, which we see so many people do. But I'm in this as long as I am in it, because I came into organization already just like studying Malcolm X, Kwame Ture, and Nkrumah and all of these people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was kind of the same way. I was at what they call the Black Ivy League, Morehouse College, which is actually, it's not a hospitable place for stuff that we're talking about, and so it was through reading and like it made me leave the campus essentially. I had to branch out and go out I went out into the community looking for. I would look at back then it was like the billboards, and you see flyers, and like I would go to Five Points or go other places in Atlanta and looking for organizations to go to meetings and things like that. And
it was a lot going on. I'm assuming.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was a lot, a lot of things to get caught up in. And just I mean, I think it definitely. There's a certain level of political education you need to make sure that you're not just being like radicalized for a moment, but that you're actually transformed. You can't unsee it, and that's the point that people have to be raised to, because people get caught up in like you had Occupy Wall Street, and you had like even the 2020 like protests. There's plenty of examples where you have this groundswell of people. And then it kind of like dies out, and you're like, where do people go? And it's because they were just radicalized for that moment. Something about that moment caught them up. With some political education, you can make that sustained, and they become transformed. And it's like you can't unsee the world the way that you come to see it. And I think that's of course a key part of struggle. One of the things I worry about is sometimes things can get too academic. People can be too caught up in the theories, and you have to read this book list, and if you haven't read this, you don't really know what's what. And so I think there has to be that balance between like people actually doing like
I ain't gonna lie, I can't stand them people, boy. Nah, I love them, man, but we, like with the academic stuff, you got, all right, I get it, man. You read out there.
I remember reaching out to a sister through email, just like ask, just trying to putting out feelers to try to get involved with some things. And she hit me back with the book list. It was like a one sentence, reply. It was like, read these books. And I'm like, damn, like, and the funny thing is, like, a lot of the books she had on the list, I'd already read. So it's like, can we have a conversation before you assume things about me? And it's like, wow. But I mean, she meant well. It was all love. I not nothing personal, but it's just like, I think like we definitely, like you mentioned about, I think at this moment, we're entering into like a new phase of repression, and there's some shifting that needs to take place, and some infrastructure that needs to be built. And one of the troubles right now, I feel, among people who are aware, politically educated, aware, people who are pushing for liberation, like in a material way, and liberation like collectively, not just their own personal like getaway or whatever. One of the issues is that there's so many siloed efforts happening, and I think that we have to be very deliberate about building bridges and connecting. And a lot of people are, which is encouraging to see, because we know divide and conquer is like the fundamental tactic that's used, and we also know that with the the level of repression that we're seeing and what we're going to be seeing in the coming years, I think it's going to really depend on having some real like solidarity forged out of like actually working together, not theoretical solidarity, but like solidarity from like, yeah, I'm gonna show up for this person because they showed up for me. You know, like we need that kind of real like ingrained solidarity where it's not just because we believe in the same thing, but we've been in the trenches together, we've done things together, because we're gonna have to. I mean, it's coming. I mean, like we're seeing precursors with like, you know, Atlanta Solidarity Fund. They got charged with RICO charges, and the Stop Cop City protesters. There's like 60 of them facing terrorism charges. Uhuru 3. You know, we see the direction things are moving. We also see the building up of the surveillance state. We see the cop cities happening all over the country. So we know where it's headed. The question is, are we heeding that and getting as prepared as possible for where things go? And this goes back kind of full circle to this idea of like this myth of like progress will happen with time. Yes, that there is a world where, you know, within 5 years, you know, like we're like way closer to liberation. There also is a world within 5 years we are further and further away from liberation. And I think that we have to, that's it. You know, like, because this thing could get as ugly as it is, it can get significantly uglier, because we're dealing with a population, you know, of where there's endless greed. We're dealing with a system where it's the people in power have endless greed. They have endless appetite for violence. They don't see us as human, value us as humans. They don't even value humans. The people who they see as humans, they don't even value. You know, and so like things can get a lot worse, and we have to act as if, you know, like there's some urgency so that we can make sure that things go in the direction that we want them to go in. You know?
I mean, the urgency to that point, man, because I usually use that when I'm talking to organizers within our organization or people that we are talking to in the community in regards to our situation. We have to be moving with that sense of urgency, and I get that. I got that from just doing, you know, working with union organizers, man, and just doing working with union organizers and working with like, I guess like Working Families Party. I don't know if they're official political party. I know they have in Philadelphia. They actually ran someone. There's a city council person that is a registered Working Families Party member. So in some places, I think they can get on the ballot.
Yeah, my understanding is they are essentially under the umbrella of the DNC, but they kind of like are a more progressive, you know, I think. But my understanding is Working Families Party is under the banner of the DNC, which is able to get.
Man, I wonder if it always been like that or there was some sort of merger, but that's a whole nother conversation. You might have to do a podcast on that one now. But they, but just like doing that type of work, that's how they would train us to go to the doors and talk to people, you know, when it came to the issues, you know, and getting them to like sign or support someone, just talking to them with a sense of urgency. But it should be that though, because it really is for us, man, when it comes to, you know, our existence under this system. So we have to move with a sense of urgency. And that's why like going back to these theoretical differences that organizations may have and not working together, you know, based on that, then, you know, it's crazy when I see two organizations or however many organizations rocking the red, black, and green. And it's like we are under the same flag and we not even organizing and working together. Yo, when I see red, black, and green, I'm like, that's
that's your people.
That's my people. You might be crazy, you might be whatever, you know what I'm saying? And we might have to work through some stuff, but we under the same flag. We part of the same nation.
I mean, it's interesting because, you know, you hear people, different camps, they don't like each other or don't mess with each other, or they feel like their way is the better way. And people would use the same language and talk about, oh, the masses, we got to get the masses on board. But you won't even get with the people of the masses who are like already, already like on the same tip as you. And so like, how you going, it's like, I think a big part of what organizers have to do now is like more modeling. How do we build things in a way that demonstrate this is what the world could look like? And if everybody's trying to do their own individual thing, it only really ultimately promotes this hyper individualistic, kind of like do for self thing that is like at the heart of what allows colonialism to like continue to exist. It's so interesting. I remember reading a while ago, which was fascinating to me, was like, I think it was in like Zimbabwe or South Africa, but it was like the accounts of like some missionaries, and they would often send the missionaries first before any violence, before anything. They would send land prospectors and missionaries, and just we come in peace, and and one of the things that I think it might have been in Zimbabwe, or what is now Zimbabwe. Back then it was or was it Rhodesia or whatever they tried to call it back.
Oh, Rhodesia, yeah. Rhodesia used to be Zimbabwe,
Zimbabwe, yeah. So, but when they were trying to establish Rhodesia, when the first people came in, what they started a project doing was teaching people how to farm individually, and like instead of having the communal plot of land, it's like, no, but you can have this fenced off area and this could be yours. And it's like this same kind of this really insidious approach that's used to like encourage us to stay separate from each other and to think separately, and to take any little minor inconsistency and treat that as a reason to be separate from each other, instead of like let's focus on the common ground that we share, and not get caught up in these little differences, because ultimately, it's like we got a garden. It's like, well, I want to grow carrots, but no, I want to grow kale. And it's like, but we all want to eat. And so it's like, it's really important right now that we kind of like cut through that nonsense and figure out principled ways to come together, which is a whole nother issue, because not everybody's principled. Not everybody lives by the principles that they espouse.
You use that word principle. I'm glad you used that word principle, because that was going to take me to a point from an experience that I just had with a committee that we have at the college, doing the workshops, doing community organizing workshops. I'm working with several organizations, and in the beginning, I remember at the first meeting, someone was brought up the point of, what our objective is as sort of a committee. Are we looking to do it was sort of like it was becoming like this larger thing outside of the work that we was going to do in the space at the college. And I just remember I was like, let's hold up on that, because if we get into that conversation, about this long-term vision, then it may turn into some, like, I don't agree with that. And next thing you know, we're arguing and we don't want to work with each other, based on some, long-term objective. So I'm like, let's let that develop through this working relationship that we have. Mm-hmm. And so, weeks that pass, we're doing the workshop, and it's just like every time we have a meeting, someone brings up like a new idea that kind of like goes beyond just the workshop thing. And probably just because of just as organizers and just doing what we're used to doing. And so someone brought up the point of like having a creating a principles of unity, like for the group. And which sounds great, like principles of unity, but it's like, okay, the principles of unity, we talking about how, what does that mean? Like principles of unity as far as like us, working together as sort of like a coalition and doing bigger work, or things that we can unify in regards to what we want these workshops to be. So that sort of thing, and then So we just put together a draft, and we came into the meeting, looking at these principles of unity, and man, we might have been talking for like an hour and a half. What do we mean when we say African? Pan-African? Well, maybe we should use African internationalism. And man, all just like this back and forth. Man, I had to take control of that thing. I'm just like, man, see, this is why we shouldn't be thinking, on this launch of like principles of unity. That's a big thing. We already talked about like these things developing and creating these things as we, continue to build this working relationship and get to know, for one, all of the organizations that's involved, we're familiar with our organizations and we have websites. And I'm talking about All African People's Revolutionary Party, Black Alliance for Peace.
Well established, clearly.
Man, come on. We know what our organizations are about and so forth. So if anything, if there's an issue, it's going to be like personalities. If anything, you don't like working with this person, but at the end of the day, we're in this space to do these workshops and so forth. So I mean, things are good. It's part of the struggle. Yeah. But the point I brought that up because those sort of like ideological things could keep us from working together, because you say I'm a Pan-Africanist, and we say we African internationalists, and we got a critique of Pan-Africanism, and now you like, well, now we got problems with each other over labels, and even though it goes, this, I get the ideology ideas behind it, but it keeps us from advancing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's interesting. Like when I think of principles, I think of like just like protocols for moving forward, not like these grander ideological. I mean, like there has to be some common ground. Right? So you can't be like, oh, we're gonna partner up with the David Duke Society and we're gonna build a program. It's like we're not, like it has to be some. But especially when you have established groups, I think it's more important for things like let's just come to a consensus about, how we communicate with each other, like how decisions are made, like what are the put in writing, like what are the short-term, like measurable goals that we're committing to working towards, like, and just like what's going to be our process for like when there are bumps in the road, like how we navigate those bumps in the road, and making sure that everybody, so like, and it could be anything from like, like at no point, anybody who like, devolves into like hurling personal insults, you got to go. You'll be censured, immediately. Like you got to go, and things like that. Just about like how do we keep the shit
white power structure, because that's all we have in America.
We know it's not going to be like all smooth, and so like to me, it's less about like. Because man, once you start getting grandiose and you start talking about, like these bigger ideas, you're gonna get caught up into like a lot of semantic warfare where people are just like, well, we want to say it this way and we want to say it that way, and then also it's like, to be honest, none of us know the way forward. Like we have ideals and we have ideologies, systems of like interpreting the world and like where we feel how we feel things should move forward, but none of us know. None of us, because we don't know what we don't know. And if we're still learning, growing human beings, then there are going to be things that transpire that are going to require us to have to pivot. We're going to, the same way that I don't think the same way about things that I thought 10 years ago, and so like if we're going to sit and butt heads over these like, subtle differences that we have in opinion when we agree on the main common things, it's like, why are we doing that when 10 years from now we might be on opposite sides of the argument? Or like you might switch to my side and I might go more to your side, or we might be in total agreement, on the idea. And so it's like, so when I think about moving forward in a principled way, to me it's more about like practically, like in terms of like, how do we make sure, knowing what the pitfalls of organizing efforts tend to be, how do we make sure that we can keep this ship moving forward, deliberately and efficiently? And so we know personalities get in the way. So how do we jump ahead and get ahead of these like personalities, or we know some people are the talkers and they want to talk the whole time. How do we get ahead of like making sure that's not the case? You know, like you know, things like that. We agree on those kind of principles of like how do we conduct ourselves with each other, and then the work speaks for itself. You know, like if you're not, you know, like how do we hold each other accountable when someone's not holding up their end of the deal? You know, like things like that. That to me is what I think of when I think of principle unity. Not we have to have some ideological consensus.
Yeah.
You know, like down to the T of like, you know, like if you're saying Pan-Africanism and African internationalism, I'm like, there's some things to tease out, right? But like we still in the same boat. like essentially. Like we so let's move forward. Let's figure out how to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Where I think it's, you know, especially like those things are not obstacles to us actually providing a service to giving political education to a student or a community member.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's actually not only is it not an obstacle, it helps, because if you're trying to encourage not just political education but critical thinking, so people can continue their education, you need differing opinions. You need people to speak to their interpretation, and when one person gets up and speaks, they have this kind of nuance to it, and another person gets up and speak. You need people to like when I first started learning martial arts, I would have people, one guy would come by and say, move your hand this way. And then the next guy would come by and be like, no, you got to do it this way. And I'd be like, well, the other guy just told me you got to, and it forces me to figure out, well, are they saying different things? You know, like, and if so, which one of them makes more sense to me? You know, and so if you're talking about political education, that's even more of an argument for why we need people with differing ideologies to an extent, right? So we still need to all be, you know, to an extent. Like, so it's not an argument.
That's why it does make sense. Yeah, it does make sense. It's like, you know, you can't completely, you know, sort of just like I guess like to dismiss the utility of having, you know, principles of unity, that there's like there has to be some ideological alignment in some places. But I guess those are conversations you have to have in regards to like, what are some things that will keep us from not being able to move forward? You know, like what are those differences? Like you said with the David Duke, you know, if somebody supports the KKK, that goes without saying. But but that's what we're talking about, you know. But yeah, for sure, man. So with that being said, man, I know we going on the top of the second hour. I wanted to give you an opportunity to just like let people know. I know you let people know in the beginning, but if they want to check you out as well, where they can go at.
Yeah, you know, like I said, I put up content when I feel like it. but yeah, I mean, I have a YouTube channel. You can find it on you know, I'm not really much on Twitter, but I have an account there, Instagram, Blue Sky, all those things.
Yo, we gotta make an exodus from Twitter though, man. I feel like
I mean, it's going that way. You're gonna make an exodus one way or the other.
That must be, man.
Yeah, I mean, they're gunning for, they're coming for a lot of people, you know, like but Just Mike DTL, which stands for Drawing the Line. The series of video essays that I do is called Drawing the Line, and you know, my goal with it is just to kind of give analysis of like, you know, our liberation struggle in a way that I feel will help people think about things in a slightly different way, and hopefully push us a little bit closer towards you know, actually getting some material results. Outside of that, I do a lot of well, I haven't been as much lately, but I do a lot of work around you know, connecting Black land stewards and people who are like Black nomads, people who are traveling, people who are just looking to get out of the rat race and looking for some new sense of autonomy. There's a lot of Black folks who are just leaving the cities, you know, going to these rural areas, buying land. There's a lot of people who are taking up like nomad lifestyles where they live out of their vehicle, or they work seasonally and they get to move around, and they kind of forego being the comforts of being in like some apartment or house to have a lower overhead so that they can have more autonomy. And among those people, there are people who really want to be involved in efforts to help us be collectively, like liberated. And, basically I just try to look for ways to connect those people together and figure out ways to help build up more communal spaces, get people to get outdoors more, people to really move towards living more aligned with nature, the way that we as human beings have lived for a long time, because we're going to need to let go of a lot of our comforts if we want to, and actually the way I frame it is we need to own our discomfort in order, if we want to really be able to effectively engage and struggle. And so you can find out more about that. You can go to wayoutdoors.org. The website is being revamped because we're kind of pivoting and figuring out a new direction to go in. But if you look on wayoutdoors.org, you can find information about that. Other than that, I'm just looking to connect and build with folks who are moving, moving in the same direction. And like I said, we can't exist in silos. We have to really. We're at a moment where I feel like if we build infrastructure in a smart way, we can play a very pivotal role in like this global struggle, this global turning point that we seem to be at. You have the Alliance of Sahel States, you have, liberation movements picking up all over the place. And I feel like we who are in the heart of empire, we have our role to play. Question is, are we positioning ourselves best to play that role and to do our part in this international struggle? I'm always looking for people to connect with who are about that life.
Man, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate even just like making the connection. Shout out to Yomi. I know he's doing like a housewarming. Are you going to be there?
I'm not sure, but he's only 15 minutes away from me. But I'm not sure. Yeah, because I have to check in with it's my wife's birthday too, so I got to check in.
Oh, okay.
See what she want to do for the day. Yeah,
I'll be down for that though, because I missed him when he was up here, so I'm like I gotta make that.
We're gonna be down for that. We definitely gotta link up then, because I'm right around the corner from him.
Okay. All right, for sure, man. Yeah, definitely, man. We're gonna continue to build. This ain't gonna be the last time. Get used to seeing Mike on We Charge Colonialism.
Let's do it.
Man. Let's continue to build, because this is a dope conversation we had, man. I want to continue to have that, especially like going into 2025, the year of Malcolm, the year of Patrice Lumumba, and we got a bunch of centennials coming up. Just the energy, man. I want to make sure that we definitely carrying on that legacy strong. In 2025, man, for the centennial. The centennials only come once in a lifetime, bro. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Hey, we gonna do that, man. So whether it's in person or online, we definitely going to be coming with the PE and the organizing. Want to do a little better too in regards to just like tapping in with people through like this platform. Like I'm just so old school. It's just like, bro, the organizing on the ground, talking to people straight up, face to face. But I know like online, this is a great tool to like really connect with people. That's the beauty of this age too. It's like you can really, build this community with people on all continents, man.
For sure.
All habitable, areas of the world, whether it's South America, Africa, Australia, Europe, and be in a virtual space together and really talk, solutions. So it's a beautiful thing.
Which is why it's being attacked so heavily right now, because the heart of colonialism depends on the primary thing, the first thing that I'd say in terms of like the process of colonizing is displacement. You got to keep people disconnected from whatever they find grounding in, you got to keep people disconnected. So these kind of spaces, we better work them while we can, before we get booted off these platforms, and then also just, be thinking ahead about, making sure that we are still connecting on the ground, like making sure that we're not just relying just on these spaces to connect with each other, because
absolutely
these spaces can be taken away.
Yeah, for sure, man. The last thing too, those 6 points, man, that's something we can publish on the website, man. We Charge Colonialism.
Yeah, for sure.
That sounds like man. You got some commentary around that, or you just got like the points?
Well, it's a whole video, but yeah.
Oh, you did a video? Okay.
Yeah, I did a video on it, but I mean, I could write it up in article form if you want me to. Yeah, I mean.
Hey, if you want to give it to the people, man, I'm gonna leave that up to you.
No. I want it out there. I mean, my goal. I don't want to be on YouTube, honestly. Like, it's not. I really started a channel because there's this thing swirling around in my head. And it helps me, it gives me a reason to organize my thoughts. And then it also gives me like it's just ideas that I have that like, well, I don't hear anybody saying it. And to me, it's like, well, maybe I'm supposed to say it. Not that people aren't saying the same thing. People just, not organizing it exactly the way I organize it, in my head. I want people who can benefit from whatever it is that I have to share, to get it however they get it, so whatever platform, doesn't matter. I don't care about building up a channel or anything like that. It's just like, because the real thing is the work. We got work to do, and that's where I'm at, let's get it done.
Yeah, for sure, man. And we will with the people, man. So appreciate. I ain't even do my little pitch that everybody does when it's like, share. But
subscribe, comment. You need to engage with these videos, because this is how it gets spread. It's not algorithm friendly. So if you hit like, you're nudging the system a little bit to show it. Like, it's already going to be they're already reading listening to the content and being like, oh, we got to push this in that category. Don't show too many people that. So help put it out there. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Check out Just Mike DTL. If you go to youtube.com/@JustMikeDTL, JustMicDTL, you can check out my videos, including the one we just mentioned about the 6 keys to becoming a danger to oppression. It's probably of the videos I have, it's my favorite, because I feel like it really does get at.
You got a favorite?
Because it's like studying history and social movements and things like that. They're just these common patterns. And I feel like for people who really want to like buck at the system and challenge the system, there are just some basic essential things that you can do that will guarantee in some capacity that you are pushing the needle the right way. And it also not just becoming a danger to oppression, but if you stick with these things, you can remain a danger to oppression. Some people get in for the right reasons, and then that grant money shows up, and you're like, man, I gotta hold back a little bit so I could get this next grant cycle and things like that. So if you want to become a danger to oppression and stay a danger, then like there's just really all I could think of was six things. There may be more other people can do, but you do these 6 things, you're a problem. So just be ready to be ready to be that problem.
Man, I feel like that. I want to talk about that the next time we get together.
Let's do it.
List of things. Let's do it, man. Like, let's definitely build on that. That sounds like a good conversation. I study history. I study movements as well. But I like what you did though. You look for like patterns. You look for sort of these themes and put it together. So I haven't done that when it comes to, just like, of course, I probably thought about it. There is like certain themes and so forth, but to organize those thoughts and to put it down on paper, I think that was important, man. So let's build on that, man. So we, I can help me organize my thoughts around.
Let's do it.
All right, for sure, man. So appreciate everybody for tapping in. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back. Check us out too. On Saturdays we have the podcast and book club. Right now we are examining Dr. Gerald Horn's The Apocalypse of Settler Colonialism. So you can check that out on Saturdays. Well, actually, you can check it out anytime. But if you want to see us live, we on Saturdays at 10 a.m. If you want to see us live. But definitely check the replays for sure. And so next time, everybody, peace. Uhuru.
Yeah, peace.